In a second, it's going to sound like this character just got attacked. But that didn't happen. What actually happened here is that this character named Yoko staged her own death. She already had that weapon placed there before interacting with our two main characters, Kirito and Asuna, in the scene. The rest of the sequence is just an act. The problem in this case being is that we still hear that. We still hear that sound despite nothing being thrown at her in that moment, because the sound design is just lying to us. The anime is basically cheating here, and does so in other ways for the entirety of the subplot. Now, to properly explain exactly how that's the case, I need to first explain why any of this is happening. It all starts in Season 1, Episode 5, where Kirito and Asuna are investigating the supposed murder of a man by the name of Kynes. As you can imagine, Kynes' death is also staged, and he's the one working with Yoko to stage hers in the scene I showed earlier. However, Kynes' attempt happens first towards the beginning of the episode, while Yoko's happens towards the end. This act that they're both pulling is to get the attention of a former guild member of theirs named Schmidt, because they suspect that he killed their former guild master, Griselda. Ideally, doing all of this will convince Schmidt that there are assassins looking for Griselda's murderer. After that, Kynes and Yoko will pose as said assassins and approach Schmidt to scare a confession out of him. Now, the strangest part here is how Kynes and Yoko staged their deaths, because they did so inside of a town. Towns are designated safe zones in SAO, meaning that they are areas in the game that prevent players from losing HP outside of formally agreeing to a duel. These duels aren't automatically triggered by engaging in combat either. They are a game mode that has to be manually selected, but therein lies the problem. They didn't use this game mode. So that begs the question, what exactly did they do? What's key to note here is that they're taking advantage of several of SAO's game mechanics and visual effects in order to do this. Number one is that while it's true that normally a player's HP bar can't decrease inside of the safe zone, their armor's durability can. The same is true for the durability of other objects, including food. This is why Yoko had a dagger in her back the whole time. She was continuously damaging her own armor in secret before and during when she was talking to Kirito and Asuna. The next thing to consider is that the visual effects shown when a player's armor gets destroyed look virtually identical to when a player dies. By keeping an eye on their armor's durability level, Kynes and Yoko can pretend like they're dead once it reaches 0 and it gets destroyed. But that still doesn't explain how they pulled their vanishing act. Which leads us to number 3. They vanished using teleport crystals. More specifically, they used their teleport crystals at the exact moment their armor was being destroyed, thus giving the appearance of dying. Unfortunately for Kynes and Yoko, there's a fundamental problem with their plan. It's that the players can see each other's HP. Seriously, this threw me for a loop when I first noticed it, because throughout the subplot the characters act as if this isn't the case. And what makes this all so egregious is that you can see that Kirito is using this ability moments after Kynes teleports when Kirito is looking at the crowd. Knowing that Kynes neither lost HP or died here is what ironically kills this whole scene. Now when Kirito tries to figure out what caused this, it's going to sound a lot more absurd given the context. For example, this is Kirito's initial reaction to Kynes' trick.
The only way he could have died in a safe zone is if he was beaten in a duel. That means everyone look for the player with the winner icon!
Which doesn't make any sense for Kirito to say here, because Kirito should have seen that Kynes wasn't losing HP. How could Kynes die from a duel without losing HP? And how could Kynes even be in a duel in the first place if he's not losing HP from being impaled? Kirito should be pointing out how weird it is that Kynes' HP remained unaffected that whole time. What we get instead is Kirito figuring out way after the fact that it was just their armor that got destroyed.
That day, the spear was sticking out of Kynes' armor. It wasn't draining his HP though. It was draining the durability of his armor.
This is a problem because that implies Kirito couldn't tell the difference at first, which should be impossible. This is especially true since unlike HP, their armor stats are hidden from plain view, which Kynes and Yoko also take advantage of to carry out this plan. The anime is just ignoring its own rules to achieve payoffs it did not earn. For example, when Kirito's looking at the crowd, we can see their HP, but not when he looks at Kynes or Yoko. Now, of course, that shouldn't matter to the characters just because we don't know that information, but it does. For this plot to work at all, Kirito and Asuna have to be tricked into thinking that Kynes and Yoko could have died, which means that Kirito and Asuna can't know how much HP either of them had at the time, just like the audience. It's like because that information was intentionally hidden from the audience, it was also hidden from Kirito and Asuna. Now that should be impossible, but if I operate with that assumption, Kirito's deductions make a lot more sense. Kirito and Asuna simply lose the ability to see other players' HP when it's convenient for the plot. So in other words, the anime cheated. Unfortunately for Kynes and Yoko, their plan still wouldn't have worked even if no one could see their HP. One of the reasons being is how they have to teleport. The teleport crystal has to be held in their hand, and then they have to say the name of the location they want to go to. Kynes does this in episode 6, and as you can see, it clearly takes him a minute. Now imagine him having to do that in a fraction of that time at a very specific moment. Now add on top of that the fact that he has to do all of this in front of a crowd of people while pretending not to move. The man's arms were down at his sides when he faked dying, and he's also wearing a very large suit of armor. You're not telling me that he somehow grabbed a teleport crystal within that time frame. You're especially not telling me that no one heard or saw this man doing so even if he could. As for Yoko, her method is arguably worse because unlike Kynes, what she's wearing doesn't even completely cover her hair, which should make it impossible for her to completely conceal the fact that she's teleporting. So the anime has to cheat again by making her hair look like it's dispersing into particles in the same way her armor does. If you really want to get technical though, the teleport animation is too big and too different looking for either of them to hide in the first place. That being said, Yoko still makes a poor attempt to conceal the fact that she's teleporting. Anyways, that's all I have for now. Thank you all for tuning in. Let me know what you guys think of the video, and I'll see you all next time.